According to the World Development Report 1990, during the period of 1980 to 1988, Pakistan's GDP of 6.5% exceeded that of Korea, China, and Hong Kong. The growth of real wages in Pakistan manufacturing during 1980 to 1988 was just about the fastest in the world at 6.2%, surpassed Thailand, which was at 7%. For the period of 1978 to 1986, GDP growth rate averaged 7% consistency per annum. The manufacturing GDP increased by 9.5% between 1977 and 1986. Large-scale industry grew by 18.2% per annum, which was a significant change in the industry growth rate. This is a very impressive performance by any standard, whether in comparison with Ayub regime or with the newly industrialized countries. The average growth rate in the period of 1978 to 1988 was a very impressive 9.6%, with the first half of Zia era showing an even higher rate of 12.8%. In both the 5th and 6th year plans of actual growth rates exceeded the targets of 12% and 9%, respectively, which was a rare occurrence in the history of Pakistan's economy. Pakistan's manufacturing sector became more capital intensive between 1975 to 1986, and the share of wages and salaries in value added fell from 26.9% in 1976 to 20.3% in 1986. Zia's regime can be divided into three subsectors. The first, from 1978 to 1982, was a period of cautious attempt to dismantle the existing government policies and restoring the confidence in the private sector. From 1982 to 85 was the period of more forceful drive towards Islamization, which followed the regime's consolidation of power. From 1985 to 88 was an attempt to disengage the government from direct control of the economy. From 1978 to 82, General Zia took many early steps which included the denationalization of agro-based industries which were run inefficiently and were highly in the red. A number of heavy chemical and cement industries were opened to the private sector, were also given further incentives to encourage industrial activities. Zia made it his mission to purify Pakistan of all ills and evils. Islamic laws were introduced and even the economy was not spared as it was brought under the influence of Islamic laws and principles. During the nationalized era of Bhutto, the public sector dominated the industrial sector and private sector had a really small role. Zia did little to change this and very little decentralization took place at the start. However, over the years, the public sector investment did fall from 72% in 1978 to 1979 to a mere 18%. In the early years of Zia, the public sector production grew rapidly than the private sector. Large-scale manufacturing output, however, in the second half of the 5th year private sector was faster. The focus of economic policy under Zia's regime was an attempt at market-friendly deregulation and liberalization of economy besides promoting healthy relationship between public and private sector. The main aim of Zia's policy was to encourage private sector investment through trade and industrial policies. The removal of the fixed peg of the rupees to dollars by introducing a managed float of the currency in 1982 led to the rupee being devalued. As the private sector investment increased from 38% in 1982 to 1983 to 42% in 1987 to 88, and the manufacturing sector increased its share from 51% to 83%, encouraged an industrial growth as the investment plans shifted heavily from public sector to the private sector. When Zia took over after Bhutto, he came off as a maiden general, and it was being anticipated that he would rather either not be able to hold on to the power that he got or that he would willingly pass it on. However, economy boomed in Zia's tenure, and that is the reason why he got away with all the opposition that he was facing. As per the Institute of Developing Economies, the manufacturing sector of Pakistan recorded an impressive growth during the 1977 to 88 period, and there were two reasons behind this. First was the flourishing of the public sector, which helped diversify the manufacturing sector and helped create a linkage effect. Second was the revival of confidence in the private sector after the brief interval of the Bhutto regime. Demand in the economy increased as a result of increase in remittances from the Gulf. Consumption demand in the agricultural services sector increased as there was an increase in the foreign resource inflows. From 1978 to 86, there was a high growth of GDP due to a strong expansion in manufacturing, and there was a boom in the domestic market due to remittances and illegal trade during the Afghan crisis. Remittances peaked $3 billion between 1982 to 83, and loans and grants averaged $1 billion annually, which helped out the government when trade was declining. Between 1978 to 88, foreign aid increased from $1.45 to $2.29 billion. Foreign resource inflows in the form of US aid were a common factor aiding to growth in Zia Years' era. However, during Zia's era, the Soviet Union's invasion of Afghanistan was a major reason behind Zia's rule prolonging. However, this increased dependency on external assistance was not sustainable in the longer run, as seizing of foreign inflows meant seizing of economic development. It is often argued that the growth during Zia's tenure was due to foreign inflows as compared to the effectiveness of the industrial policies themselves. Output growth was not in correspondence with the factors employed in the manufacturing sector. A structural adjustment program was introduced in the 7th five-year plan. The plan set ambitious targets for overall reforms in the industrial sector. The industrial policy committed the government of Pakistan to the 3-year agreement, which included a few of the following: limiting the list of specified industries, deregulating business decisions, rising the investment sanction limit annually, phasing out industrial location policies over a 3-year period, and provision of infrastructural services at prices that reflect economic costs, divesting the shares of public sector companies to the private sector, enhancing export incentives, and achieving a tariff range of 0 to 100% by 1st of July 1990. In order for these reforms to have a direct impact on the industrial development, it was proposed to increase indirect taxation by July 1990, withdrawing of subsidies on gas, electricity, and fertilizers, increase in producer prices of major crops, and a 12.5% reduction in the public sector development program. The growth rate of manufacturing declined from 1980s to 1990s, falling from 8.21% to 4.8% annually, whereas in 1996 and 1997, the growth rate for industrial sector was minus 0.1% and 1.5% in 1999 to 2000. There was a huge shift in growth in manufacturing sector during 1999 to 2010 to 14%. The first year after Musharraf's dismissal in 2008 and 2009, the growth rate in manufacturing sector was minus 3.6%, and the manufacturing sector is struggling ever since. Moreover, the reason for the boom in manufacturing sector in Musharraf's era was a consequence of the windfall gains on account of 9/11 and especially the rescheduling of Pakistani's debt after 9/11. However, the fall in the growth after 2008 came from a transition from a military dictatorship to a democratically elected government. The global recession began in 2008, bringing the phenomenal rise in world oil and food prices affected Pakistan's growth. Moreover, the private investment in 1992 and 1993 fell from 10% to 8%. The gross fixed capital formation, also known as GCFC, in the private sector fell continuously over the 1990s by as much as 60% between 1991 and 1999. During the 1980s, public investment as a percentage of GDP was higher than private investment, whereas the vice versa happened during 2000s. The interest rates during Zia's regime were controlled and regulated at a low rate. During 1991 to 2001, the market forces decided to prices of utilities like gas, electricity, and petroleum inputs, having an impact on final product prices. Also, the tariff rates were fallen during 1986 to 1987.